The night Vivian Cross fired Marcus Bell in front of 400 people, she did it without learning his name. She simply pointed at the man in the gray work shirt near the edge of the stage and said, "Get this grease-stained nobody away from my prototype before he breaks something else." The audience laughed. Marcus said nothing. He set down his tools, nodded once, and walked toward the exit, never mentioning that the machine humiliating her on that stage was built on a design that belonged to him. Vivian Cross had spent 2 years and $90 million building toward this single evening. She believed this launch would make her the most important name in American manufacturing. She was about to learn that the quiet man she had just thrown out was the only person alive who could save her company, and that everything she thought she understood about power was about to come apart in front of every investor she had spent her life trying to impress. So stay with this story, because the moment she realizes who he is, the entire room goes silent. To understand that night, you have to go back 9 years, to a single-bay garage where a man worked until 2 in the morning while his daughter slept on a cot beside the workbench. Marcus Bell was 31 then, a widower raising a 6-year-old girl named Lily. He fixed engines during the day and designed them at night, a thermal regulation system for industrial motors that he was certain could change how the entire industry built machines. People told him to stop dreaming. A single father with cracked hands and a second-hand truck was not the kind of man whose name ended up on patents. But Marcus understood something the experts kept forgetting. He understood that the part everyone ignores is usually the part that decides whether the whole machine lives or dies. There was one winter he never spoke about. Lily had pneumonia, and the heating in their apartment had failed, and Marcus had $40 left until the end of the month. He sat on the floor of the hospital hallway with his blueprints spread across his knees, refusing to leave her side, refusing to give up on the design that he believed would one day lift them out of that life. He filed the patent 3 months later. He had to borrow the filing fee, but he filed it, and it was approved, and he tucked the certificate into a drawer and told no one, because he had learned that the world treats a man very differently when it thinks he is nothing. A year after that, a fast-rising company called Cross Dynamics licensed his thermal system to use in their engines. The paperwork was handled quietly through a small holding company Marcus had set up, and the people running Cross Dynamics never knew the inventor by sight. To them, he was just a licensing line in a contract. To survive, Marcus took a floor job at one of their plants, maintaining the very machines his design had made possible. It kept food on the table. It kept Lily in school. And it kept him close to the work he loved, even if no one in that building knew his name. When the founder of Cross Dynamics died, the company passed to his daughter, Vivian, who had never once been told the name of the man whose patent her flagship product depended on. The night of the launch, the auditorium was packed. Investors filled the front rows. Reporters lined the walls. On a rotating platform at the center of the stage sat the Titan engine, Cross Dynamics' new flagship, the machine Vivian promised would redefine the industry. She had invited the press to witness history. She had no idea she was about to witness something else entirely. Marcus was there in his work clothes, stationed near the equipment in case the technical team needed a hand. He had spent the afternoon quietly noticing something that worried him. The cooling line on the prototype had been routed wrong during assembly. He had mentioned it to a supervisor that morning. He had been told to mind his own job. Vivian took the stage to applause. She spoke for 10 minutes about vision and legacy in the future. Then she pressed the switch to bring the Titan engine to life. For 30 seconds, it ran beautifully. And then the temperature gauge on the giant screen behind her began to climb. A low whine filled the auditorium. Smoke curled from a seam in the casing. The number on the screen kept rising, and the applause died into a nervous murmur. Vivian's smile froze. The engineers rushed the stage, talking over each other, none of them able to stop the climb. The most important night of her life was failing in real time, in front of every camera in the room. And that is when she looked for someone to blame. Her eyes landed on Marcus, standing calmly near the equipment in his gray work shirt. "You," she said, her voice sharp with panic. "You were near the unit all afternoon. What did you do to it?" She turned to her security team, her face flushed. "Get this grease-stained nobody away from my prototype before he breaks something else." The room laughed, that uncertain, cruel laugh of people relieved it isn't them. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. He did not argue. He set down the tools in his hands, nodded once, and turned toward the exit. But the real storm was only just beginning. Behind him, the gauge crossed into the red. An engineer shouted that the core was approaching thermal failure, that if it ran away, it would not just destroy the prototype, it would take the data, the backups, and very likely a section of the stage with it. $90 million and 2 years of work were about to turn into a fire in front of 400 witnesses. Vivian spun toward her team. Then shut it down. Somebody shut it down. We can't, an engineer said, his voice cracking. The thermal regulation system is proprietary. It's locked. The cutoff sequence is tied to the original patent holder's specifications. We never had the full schematic. Whoever designed this is the only one who can bring it down safely. The color drained from Vivian's face. Then find him, she said. Whoever owns that patent. Get them on the phone. Get them here. I don't care what it costs. We have minutes. And from the back of the room, near the door where her security had been escorting him out, a calm voice answered. You don't need the phone, Marcus said. You just need the man you called a nobody 30 seconds ago. Every head in the room turned. Vivian's mouth opened, but no sound came. Marcus walked back down the aisle, unhurried, the crowd parting without quite knowing why. He stepped onto the stage, knelt beside the failing engine, and pressed his hand flat against a panel most people would never have noticed. He keyed in a sequence from memory. The wine that had filled the auditorium began, slowly, to fall. The number on the screen stopped climbing. It was held, and then it began to drop. The room exhaled all at once. When the gauge settled back into the safe zone, Marcus stood and turned to face her. From his jacket, he drew a folded document, worn soft at the creases, and held it up so the front row could see. My name is Marcus Bell, he said. I designed the thermal regulation system inside that engine. I hold the patent. Cross Dynamics has licensed my work for 8 years. He looked at the engineers. And the reason it failed tonight is that the cooling line was installed backward. I flagged it this morning. I was told to mind my own job. A man in the front row stood, the lead investor, a silver-haired figure whose decisions moved markets. Mr. Bell, he said, we have been trying to identify the holder of that patent for years. Do you understand what you just saved? The room that had laughed at him a minute ago could not find a single word. Vivian Cross stood frozen at the center of her own stage. Every assumption she had carried into that night collapsed at once, and for the first time in her life, she looked small in front of the people she had most wanted to impress. She thought of the words she had used. She thought of the laughter she had invited, and she felt it all turn cold in her chest. Mr. Bell, she said, and her voice was barely above a whisper. I owe you an apology I don't know how to give. I judged you by your shirt and your hands. I'm ashamed of what I said. Marcus studied her for a long moment. He was not angry. He had stopped being angry about people like her a long time ago. These hands built the thing that made your company possible, he said quietly. I've been on your factory floor for years, keeping your machines alive, and not one person ever asked my name. He paused. Your father used to say the measure of a leader is how they treat the people they think can do nothing for them. I met him once. He shook my hand. He let the words settle. The patent made me comfortable a long time ago, Vivian. I never needed your stage. I only stayed close to the work because I love it. That's the difference between us. Vivian lowered her eyes. For the first time in her life, she had no answer. Marcus folded the document and slipped it back into his jacket. Then he did something no one expected. He turned to the engineers, knelt again beside the wounded machine, and said, reroute the cooling line the way I showed your supervisor this morning, and this engine will run clean. It's a good design. It deserves to work. Because the work had always mattered to him more than the people who failed to see it. He fixed it that night, not for her, but for the thing he had built. The launch was rescheduled. The Titan engine ran flawlessly the following week, and Cross Dynamics survived. Vivian kept the worn patent certificate framed in her office afterward, a copy Marcus allowed her to make, where she would see it every single morning. A reminder of the night she nearly lost everything because she could not see past a gray work shirt. Because the most important person in the room is rarely the one holding the microphone. Sometimes it's the quiet one being shown the door, the one who learned long ago that real worth is built in silence and never needs to announce itself. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment below. What do you think Vivian felt the moment she realized who he really was? Your opinion matters. I'd love to hear your thoughts.